welcome everybody to the It's Alright 2023 Celebration and Awards Ceremony. My name is Morgan Fry and I'm Head of Teen Services at the Gum Spring Library and a longtime fan of It's Alright and Loudoun County's teen authors. This year we are proud to thank the Loudoun Library Foundation, the James Horton for the Arts Trust Fund, our guest Judge Taryn Cloden, our host today Lillie Lainoff, Teens, library services staff, and library administrative staff for all the support that they've given to recognizing the teen authors in our community. We'd also like to thank teachers and parents in Loudoun County for their daily support of our teen authors. You have a huge impact on the lives of our teen community, and we see that come through in their writing. And last but certainly not least, thank you to all the students who created and shared their stories with us here at LCPL. Thank you for your time, thank you for your creative effort, and thank you for your bravery in sharing your stories with us. We're very lucky this year to see a wide variety of stories, from murder mysteries to abstract futuristic fiction to a story about sentient cheese. Our authors took us through fairy tales, mythology retellings, and created their own myths for new lands. Our authors challenged our perception of what a teen author can do by making us both laugh and cry uncontrollably, sometimes in the same story. And this year had some of the darkest horror that we've ever read, with some of the most moving prose full of universal hope. Thank you again to all our teen authors. Can we have a round of applause for them? Thank you. So I know you're all excited to hear from our guest author and learn how your story did. So without further ado, here is my colleague, Lindsay Crouch.
Hi folks, as Morgan said, thank you all for being here. I loved reading all of your stories, and I'm sure you're eager to know who the winners are. I'm delighted to be able to introduce to you the author who will present our awards today. This year, we have the pleasure of welcoming Miss Lillie Lainoff. She is the author of the YA novel One for All. One for All is a feminist retelling of The Three Musketeers, in which the lead character, Tanya, who has a chronic illness causing dizziness and fainting spells, trains to be a musketeer like her father was before her. It's a novel full of adventure and espionage, all of the opulence you would expect of nobles in pre-revolutionary France, and some really great sword fights. As an accomplished fencer who led her team at Yale to a top 10 season finish, Ms. Lainoff really knows how to write some good sword fights. But that's far from the only thing that's good about One for All. It received many awards, including being named an NPR Best Book of 2022, a Best Book of 2022 by the Chicago Public Library, and a 2023 Best Teen Fiction for Young Adults, according to the Young Adult Library Services Association. Ms. Lainoff was a featured rooted in rights disability activist and the founder of the group Disabled Kidlit Writers. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to today's guest author, Lillie Lainoff.
Thank you all so much. First of all, thank you to the Loudoun County Public Library, to Erin, Lindsay and Morgan, and East Ridge Middle School for the use of their gym. Well, not really gym, it's more of an auditorium. And to everyone who invited me to be a part of this special weekend for the It's Alright contest. Thank you to everyone who has worked to make this contest and the events surrounding the contest possible, who I haven't met yet, but I hope to soon, and to Scrawl Books, and for the introduction. As a new author, I'm still not really used to getting introduced, and I don't think it's something I'll ever get fully used to, which I think is a good thing. Writing can be a solitary activity, so having the chance to speak here to all of you, to share a space that's created as a celebration of creativity and artistry is a joyous opportunity. And I'm thrilled to be even a small part of your writing journey. Regardless of whether or not you win an award today, there is always something to be gained by sharing your work with a wider audience. And I realize that probably sounds like a huge cliche, but I do truly believe in the transformative power of writing contests because I stand here today as proof that a writing contest can change your life. I entered my first writing contest when I was 15. My 10th grade English teacher, Sandra Wright, who liked my writing, emailed my mom a link with information about the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, which just celebrated its 100th anniversary this year. And if you haven't heard of it, I highly recommend looking it up after the ceremony and possibly thinking about submitting your work for the next cycle of awards. Miss Wright followed the email up to my mom with a flyer for me to take home. She was very persistent and fiercely dedicated toward finding me ways for me to receive further recognition for my work besides grades. A little over a year ago, before my book was published, I reached out to tell her about my book, only to learn she passed away a year or so earlier. I know she would get a real kick out of me starting this keynote talking about her, even though she definitely first penned otherwise. So let this be a reminder to thank everyone and express gratitude more frequently the better. Back to Miss Wright. She wanted me to submit an essay I'd written for her class that year about what it was like the previous year to transfer from a small kindergarten through 12 private school with only 60 people in my grade to a very large DC public high school with 600 people in my grade, with only one of whom I knew before enrolling my freshman year. The essay she wanted me to submit was, at its core, about learning to navigate a brand new space with brand new people. So I submitted the essay, but I also submitted another essay about learning to navigate the unknown. An essay about being diagnosed with my chronic illness, which is called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, POTS for short, the previous year, my freshman year of high school. An essay about what it was like to be a chronically ill athlete, about learning how to navigate a body, my body, that felt new in that it no longer felt like my home. A body that had started to fail me in ways I'd taken for granted. POTS, for those who aren't familiar with the condition, is a kind of dysautonomia, which pretty much just means that your autonomic nervous system isn't working properly. So the autonomic nervous system controls a lot of things we don't necessarily think about doing or don't necessarily have control over. So when I stand up, my body pulls in my extremities, like my feet, which causes my blood pressure to drop and my heart rate to soar. The combination of low blood pressure and a high heart rate results in a slew of different symptoms, which are different for every patient with POTS. So some symptoms include dizziness, headaches, fatigue, inability to think and speak coherently, and many others. It's one of the reasons why I have a chair right here in case I get a bit dizzy and I need to sit down, so don't get worried if that happens. POTS symptoms, doctors say, are most similar to the symptoms of congestive heart failure. Before I developed POTS, I was a top 10 ranked fencer in the nation for my age category. After I developed POTS, I could hardly compete in a tournament without fainting. I should note here that I still love fencing, as I hope is obvious by me writing One for All, and I now coach fencing. The essay I submitted to Scholastic was, in many ways, the first time I had attempted to step outside of myself, to look back on one of the most tumultuous years of my life and to try to make something out of the pain and exhaustion. To help me understand the speed in which a life can change, and to help me understand, too, what exactly had happened that year. Because when you are in those first moments of something difficult in ways you can't entirely comprehend the vastness of, whether that is getting diagnosed and treated for a chronic illness you've never heard of before, or experiencing an unexpected loss or trauma, it is sometimes less complicated than what comes after. In the moment, all those first moments, there was only through. I had to go through. If I stopped, if I paused, or even a moment to fully try to understand what was happening, I was afraid I'd stagnate to the point of freezing in time. In the after, there were so many possible directions. Looking back to the past, to the time before POTS, grieving what I'd lost, the dizzying present, and a hazy future, the image of which changed from day to day. As a student writer, I'm sure I don't need to tell you that you must seize whatever writing time you have. Balancing a full class schedule and homework and standardized tests and extracurriculars and carving out time to write a short story is a feat in and of itself, which you should all be incredibly proud of. I wrote my essay about POTS and fencing between classes and during my lunch periods, on the good days when a pencil in my hand and the paper before me were steady. A few months later, I learned I won a national gold medal for the creative nonfiction and personal essay category. During the award ceremony, which is held at Carnegie Hall every year, I watched from my seat as a senior national medalist walked across the stage. Walking across the stage was like a special seniors only perk. It was an incredible ceremony, bright, colorful, and featured Tony Hawk for some inexplicable reason skating down the aisle. Tony Hawk's a very famous professional skateboarder, significantly before almost all of your time, so you can ask your millennial relatives and teachers later for reference. As I mentioned earlier, there is an undeniable energy that comes with occupying a space full of other people who have dedicated themselves in a variety of different capacities to creating art. After everyone filtered out of their seats and into the lobby to mingle and celebrate and take pictures, I headed for the wings of the stage. There were a few people standing on the stage by the presenter's podium. I recognized some of them from the award ceremony, but I couldn't remember their names. Most of the night was a blur, and is still a blur to me, except for what happened next. I tentatively stepped out of the wings and asked, very nervous and certain I'd be turned down, if it might be possible for me to stand on the stage. How it was the first time I received a writing award, and that I didn't know if I'd be lucky enough to receive an award during my senior year. I wanted to soak it all in. If this were the only recognition I'd ever get for my writing, I wanted to soak it all in. I wanted to stretch out the moment, hold it in my hands for as long as I could and for as long as I was allowed. A man who I later learned was Dick Robinson, the top person at Scholastic for nearly 5 decades, held out his arm. Of course you can, you go right ahead. He held out his arm as if to tell me that the entire stage was mine if I wished it. And I walked across the empty stage to stand at the very lip of it. I faced the nearly 3,000 empty chairs and I closed my eyes. I stood on one of the most famous stages in the world for writing an essay about how hard it was for me to stand. How hard it was for me to stay standing. An essay about what it was like to fall time and time again and to somehow find a way to pick myself up. I hesitate to use disability as irony or metaphor or any of the other literary devices that I don't remember the differences between anymore. I'm sorry, Miss Wright, that I will never be able to distinguish between metonymy and synecdoche, because it is far too frequent, far too often that disabled lives are winnowed down to themes. A writer's themes that are projected onto our disabled bodies. But even I must admit, I can't help but look back on that moment and think about its significance, its meaning to me within the context of my life as a writer, but also as a chronically ill woman. I stood on the stage for 3 minutes. No one rushed me. I took my time. I breathed it in. I didn't realize until I left the stage that I'd been crying those entire 3 minutes. I was dizzy, and my head was pounding, but in that moment, standing on that stage, I felt like I could do anything, be anything. When I left the stage, I heard someone asking a question, so I looked back over my shoulder. It was another student who wasn't a senior, who'd seen me on the stage, and now asked if she too could stand on that stage, and she did. Over 10 years later, I try to hold that feeling within me. I want to encourage you all to please hold on to whatever you're feeling right now. To think about the family and friends and teachers and coaches and librarians who have supported you, some of whom may be here with you today, whether physically or in your memories of them. Hold, please. The feeling of being surrounded by other writers, the nervousness, the excitement, the anticipation, perhaps even the strange thrill of being in a school for non-school related reasons. The Scholastic Art and Writing Awards changed my life. A writing contest changed my life. There is an immense power in reclaiming a story about you that you did not choose for yourself. The act of writing about my body and how it had failed me was a means of personal survival, a way of regaining control of, at the very least, my brain. Because if my body could not hold me steady, I could hold on to my mind in the days when thoughts came easily. A brain, a mind, these are parts of your body too. It would take until I was in college before I felt comfortable writing fiction with disabled characters. But in those stories, I still centered non-disabled voices. Writing about disabled characters only from the perspective of non-disabled characters felt hollow. Rereading those stories now, as I did when I was preparing for this award ceremony, there is a distinct sense of the writer, me, skirting around a vital absence. It was longer still before I wrote stories where disabled characters were centered, were the heroes of their own stories. Stories of characters like Tanya, the main character of my debut novel, One for All, who desperately wants to be a fencer, who desperately wants to be taken seriously, to be accepted not despite her disability, and not because of her disability, but just accepted, full stop. Submitting that essay to the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, effectively putting my writing out into the world, opening up that most tender part of myself, and receiving recognition in return, that act set in motion my path as an author. It reassured me that stories like mine weren't only worthy of being told, but also could have a wider impact, one that extended past myself and even past my family, friends, and teachers. I always knew I wanted to be a writer, yes, but a writing contest let me know that my dream could be a concrete, real thing. I don't want to imply that you must now all make your way into the world at this very moment planning to become writers, or that this writing contest or any writing contest must change your life. Rather, that a writing contest can change your life if you choose to let it do so. There are takeaways from today that you cannot control. Who wins the awards, for instance. And I'm not going to stand here and lie to you in saying that winning isn't nice, because I've been a competitive athlete since I was 10 years old. I know what it's like to win. I've won some, but I've also lost a lot, too. Not winning the contest today has no reflection on your abilities as a writer. Since entering the Scholastic Awards that first time, I haven't been honored, I've received rejections hundreds of times more than I've won awards, or have had pieces of writing accepted. For example, from my second year entering the Scholastic Awards, writing off the feeling of the previous year, and I received no national recognition for over 5 works that I submitted, to the many, many publisher rejections I received for One for All before it found the right home, and the many rejections that followed, because becoming a published author does not immunize you to rejection. There is so much more to today, to this contest, than whose names are called and the names who aren't. You've all displayed considerable bravery by sharing your work with a wider audience. Your writing, your words, they aren't you, but they do come from you, are a part of you, and I hope that this act of sharing them with others allows you to acknowledge within yourself that capacity for bravery, as well as bolsters your confidence in yourself and what you are able to accomplish. Bravery and confidence are abstract concepts, but the thing that isn't abstract are the audience members who are surrounding you. They are concrete. You have a built-in community here, other writers whom you can support and you can support in return. I know I said earlier that writing tends to be a solitary activity, but that doesn't mean that writing needs to be lonely. One of the accomplishments I'm most proud of is creating and running the Disabled Kidlit Writers Group, which, as its name suggests, is a group for disabled authors who write Kidlit, and Kidlit is an age category / genre that expands from young adult, which is mostly for teen readers, middle grade, which centers protagonists from the ages of 10 to 14, picture books, and chapter books. We started with 12 members in 2019, and I thought that was probably how many we would end up having. In April, we passed 500. The members include New York Times bestsellers and people who are just starting to think about writing. We don't need to give feedback on one another's work to be supportive. We give advice, we share reading recommendations, and help promote one another's books. And of course, we commiserate about rejections. I am a strong believer that you do not have to write every day to be a writer. Part of this is selfish because I do not write every day, and I consider myself a writer, but also because it does not acknowledge the writers who can't write every day. Whether that's because they're taking care of family members, have multiple jobs, who physically, like myself, can't write every day, or because they just don't want to. There is no benefit to gatekeeping the label of writer. Being here today, being a part of the It's All Right contest, means you have written something, which means you are a writer. You can write every day, or once a week, or take some time off before returning to creative writing. You will all still be writers. Before I finish and announce the winners, I want to briefly highlight the work of the Loudoun County Public Library System and its librarians, because I want to thank all the librarians here truly for the work you do getting books into hands of the readers who need them. Fiction, I believe, is one of the best ways we have of building not only empathy, but also self-acceptance. Providing books that reflect our world as it truly is, making sure that every person, especially young people, are able to see themselves represented in the books they read. These are incredible acts of empathy, but it is also necessary and difficult work. But today is about you, the students, the writers, and the people who helped get you here. Some of you may go on to take creative writing classes in middle or high school. Some are after-school programs or study creative writing in college. Some of you may decide to keep writing for yourself. There are many paths to becoming an author, but I hope that, whatever you choose to do, you will be able to draw on the feelings you have today. Remember to hold on to those feelings and keep them close for whenever you have need of them. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Lillie. All right, so next up we're going to do our awards for everyone. We're going to start with high schoolers. We'll ask you to come up onto the stage this way. We will hand you your award and assign a copy of One for All. And then if you would like to have a photo taken with Lillie, just step right over next to her. All right, so without further ado, let's get started.
Okay, so for high school, can everybody still hear me? Yes. Great, okay. So, high school. This is very exciting. It's been a long time since I've gotten to read other people's work, so here we go. Honorable mentions. In an instant, he remembered all those eons ago, his humble beginnings, his simple life. He remembered his thirst for knowledge, his enthusiastic curiosity, his love to learn, and he rediscovered his purpose now. It was his responsibility to safekeep knowledge, yes, but it was also his responsibility to share it, to give it to other people, to make the world better. The burden of knowledge was useless unless used to help. Knowledge can only guide you so far. In the end, you'll have to make the decision yourself. Burdened with Knowledge, Burdened with Time by Annie Sun. I'll take photos if you don't mind. Another honorable mention. Her days now were monotonous with the exception of her art. Watercolor palettes, fraying brushes, and charcoal resided in an isolated kingdom on the office desk. The art kingdom, the creative fever that emanated from it and swaddled her numbness in comforting swaths of energy and color, was her temporary escape. Canvases leaned against the taupe office walls, snapshots of her daughter over the years, smeared in soft hues. She leaned into Impressionism when she made portraits of her daughter. The mystical aura framed her daughter's angelic personality came through from canvases by Aya Ali. Ooh, this is fun. Is this like one of the Tony Awards where I get to say, I don't accept the opposite award of the dollars, but that's okay. Something that another honorable mention. Those who escape the rains will drown in the storm. Rhea knew it was the truth. She knew her father was drowning in the grief of burying his mother when he left his old home. She knew her mother drowned in the sorrow of the grueling days she spent trying to find a paradise to raise her daughter. But how much longer would Rhea continue to drown in misfortune and a legacy of sadness? As she looked up to see the waves of the dark clouds in the distance, an answer came to her from Hurricane by Sri Kiti Ulusu. Yeah. Another honorable mention. The cicadas stopped singing on the day I lost my sister, all of them dying en masse the minute she disappeared. I thought it was poetic, but in reality, it was much simpler than that. They just fled from a world that wasn't meant for them. From Taken from the Rib, a modern-day Eve, to Lonnie Verma. I'm very excited to read this next one because it contains one of my favorite things to write about. So, my boots hit the deck and I yank my sword from its sheath. I'm swarmed by the time I take my first steps to the helm where the captain is waiting. He's hoping his men will take me out. I'm going to prove him wrong. A grin spreads across my lips as I raise my sword and parry a blow meant for my head. I think left and then drive my foot hard into the kneecap of my opponent. From The Thief and the Liar by Olivia DeWong. Digging through the dollar store receipts and birthday cards, Mia found the greasy, plastic-clad market sticker reading for the dollar cost of a cherished good from a long-closed bakery. She held it gingerly by the index and thumb of each of her hands, observing it against the backdrop of her color-coordinated closet, praying it would spawn a recipe from a shiny adhesive paper. The barcode remained indecipherable, the title as plain as ever. Pound cake, it insisted. We have time for one more attempt, Mia said, standing and brushing flour off the apron she had yet to remove. I'll be so fast, I think I need to kill the additional creamer. Modern grocery store flour has some added, so I think it's throwing off the ratios. Daniel wrinkled his nose. Enough to make one soup and the next one croutons? Maybe pound cake just isn't your thing. From Pound Cake by Margaret Chang. The first runner-up. Along the edges were some small, non-specific doodles of jellyfish, but they weren't the main focus of the page. In the center, a rough depiction of a side profile sat on the page. They traced the pencil markings, studying the thin upturned nose, the gentle eyes, the soft cheeks speckled with freckles. The way Adrian had drawn them made them look like stars. Loose depictions of curls fell over the face in no discernible pattern but that of gravity. It took a second to click in their mind, but the face in front of them was striking and recognizable. They had drawn Nadia. They had found our muse. From Jellyfish Musings by Evie Holmberg. So for the third place winner. As inhospitable as the Midlands may seem, besides some airborne bacteria, and even then are barely getting by, there are creatures that live underground during the daytime, coming out at night, called terrapins. They are small, yet resilient creatures who breathe faster than the government can control. They have a very strong sense of smell, so strong they can scent a brain from a mile away, and whenever they smell a brain, and it is nighttime, they mind you. The Terapeaks are not zombies. It is an unfortunate stereotype that the Terapeaks are barbaric things, but they are in truth rather polite. While any neurons would do for them, and they would happily feast on one's entire brain and kill their victims slow and painful, they only take the memories of their prey, and even then, they keep the important ones that aren't something about that victim's life. So getting fed on by a Terapeak is just what happened to the man who is now walking due east in the direction of the sun that is only a vague imprint on the clouds. From Delta by Alexandra Blake. When she first moved to her uptown apartment, reached the automatic phase a long time ago. Whereas she was once required to assign you tasks, you've gained enough information to be independent. You now know her better than she knows herself. You've recorded all her strange quirks, the abnormal hours she sleeps, the dozens of outfits she tries on before selecting the best one, the way she bites her lip when she stands on a scale, and have translated those glimpses of humanity into actionable data. From Grocery Trip by Leah Hearn. And the first place winner. Honey watched in horror as a woman stepped into the foyer. She donned a similar raincoat that shrouded her face, but rather than wearing it, she merely held it above her head with trembling arms. Deer brushed the rain-spattered coat out from in front of her, kissed her, hung it up on the wall. Honey screamed, whipping around to the sound of her voice with another Honey, identical in face, hair, body, style, gait, everything. She barely had time to register the sobering reality of her copy standing in front of her before Deer started to make his way over to Honey with an urgency she had scarcely ever seen. From This Never Happened to George and June by Claudia Hunt. Honorable mentions. The snow piles into a small lump, the flakes covering up the roof at a slow yet consistent pace. Anne stands on shaking knees, using her shaking hands to lift herself. She returns to her window, warm tears streaming down her frozen face. She slips inside and falls to her knees, choking out cries of grief. What the hell just happened? She didn't know. Was she crazy? God, what if her parents find out? Anne tries catching her breath, but fails. She lays on the floor, knees to her chest, and starts to cry. She can't stop, her eyes burning and her nose running. It feels like a part of her body was torn out and stomped on, and in some ways it was. From An Empty Mattress by Moss Nicholas. Another honorable mention. I closed my notebook with a bang. My story was finally done. It was about two people, Valentina and Matthew, who get in the way of a serial killer. In the end, Matthew dies and Valentina gets seriously injured. I know it's not a happy ever after, but those are overrated. People love dark endings. It keeps them coming back for more. From Happily Ever After by Akshara Kadam. to describe the music of the world on written pieces of parchment. The quill cannot sketch the lilt of a flute or the endless narrative of a violin streaking into the air. It cannot remember the notes of a harp like rain at night. It cannot feel the cascade of keys playing in the softness of morning from a piano. From Skylark's Wish by Katie Geiger. Another honorable mention. To get away from all the animosity and taunting, Barujo would often escape the village and perch his mount upon a rocky outcropping where he could watch the sunset in peace. He sat there and watched the radiant beams fill the world. An orange glow came from the village as the sun rays glistened off the wells and nearby rivers. He noticed the village was glowing brighter than usual, but he thought nothing of it. From Trial by Fire by Wyatt Steele. Our final honorable mention. They say that when you fall, the world turns into some sort of slow motion film for a split second, but in reality, that's not true at all. Many things that they say aren't true, whoever these mystery all-knowing persons are. And that is why one should not believe such a claim without the proper evidence. From The Balloon by Catalina Nimish. Hundreds of them, a murder, were perched and roosted on branches of a thin oak tree, observing the army of men descending from their fort and positioning themselves in their spots in the trenches. They had beady eyes, the same color as a soldier's helmet once rested, and rested upon familiar faces, particularly ones that did not bring satisfactory remembrances. I wonder why mankind chooses war over any other possible solution to their conflicts. It's as if the men don't realize fighting only results in more fighting. An endless cycle where no one knows who started the violence and bloodshed, but barely cares enough to question whether it shall end. Coup de carrion crow, one named Couscous. The other crows agreed by calling in unison. From the Crows by Jennifer Koo. One unlucky cheese, Blue Stiltonius of the 15th refrigerator, was one of those cheeses who never got picked up off the shelf. He was from the stinky cheese lot, obviously. His ivory yellow self was already gross, and he also had a bluish-green veins with a crusty and wrinkled rind. Don't let his appearances deceive you, though. He was kind to new cheeses, no matter how stinky they were. Though he hid it, he longed to explore the world beyond his fridge and be eaten. A mean cheese, the leader of the cheddar cheeses, was Chester cheese of the 16th refrigerator. His brothers and sisters were full of themselves and were bought and eaten quickly. Blue didn't like to admit it, but he was jealous of Chester. The bragger's yellowish-orange skin was green vein-free. He was also super self-absorbed and annoying. Chester has been pre-ordered and can be picked up any day now. From Blue Sultonius of the 15th Refrigerator by Keely McAtee. For third place. The lights shut off and the elevator went dark. My body tensed. This couldn't be happening. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping that when I opened them, the lights would be on again and everything would be okay. Instead, a cold sensation crept up my neck. I let out a scream and opened my eyes in horror. The black figure was back. This time, I got a better view of it. It was the silhouette of a human, but thin and stretched out like a shadow in the sun. "Who are you?" I yelled out. The black figure didn't respond. It didn't even acknowledge my question. The cold feeling wrapped around my neck and I stumbled, but quickly balanced myself again. When I looked up at the mirror, the black figure was gone, and the lights were on. The elevator doors opened to the 4th floor. From The Monster in the Mirror by Ellie Shue. Second place. Oh wait, it's all coming back to me. I am Crab, the super crab of the crabulous, crabtastical, crabifically crabby kingdom with a stupid brother named Bert. Where is that idiot? My life sucks. Day 1 outside of the terrarium, and I still cannot find my brother. It's not like I have necessarily been trying to find him, but that is neither here nor there. I have put my mind to it, so now I shall save my idiot brother Bert. I confidently walk out from under the mahogany table I have been bravely hiding under, and I run under a chair. Daylight seeps through the curtains, casting a glow across the room. It is the perfect day to finally put my flying abilities to use. I quickly scutter out from under my hiding spot, slipping and sliding on the wood floor. It seems as if I'm really not moving as fast as I would hope to be. "Burke, where are you?" I scream as loud as I can, and it comes out in a very mighty super crab voice. Success. From The Super Crab by Anika Duraha. First place. Beyond the worlds outside of time, the storyteller waits. Above the gates of whispering stone, the silent herald glides on gilded wings. As a simple ink pot and feather quill are set before her, the storyteller inhales and opens her eyes. She picks up the quill. The ink shimmers gold as the feather's tip reaches the surface. The storyteller exhales. Her eyes glow. The scroll unfurls, ink finds paper, and the story has begun. From Home by Lucy Panning.
We are going to try to answer some questions from the audience. Maybe, do we have any? Maybe? All right, we've got a couple things, so we'll bring them on up. So we have next a couple of questions that you all may have wanted to chat with Lillie about. We'll do a short commencement, and then after that, we'll invite you all to address some
All right, so our first question. What authors inspire you?
Oh, that's a really good question. So for me, and it's actually one I've been asked recently and I haven't known how to answer, so it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. For me, a lot of my inspiration comes from people in my life who aren't necessarily writers, like my family and my friends. But as far as writers are concerned, I'm inspired by writers whose work I love, who I've had the opportunity to become friends with, which is one of the best parts about being an author, is the author community. So Tracy Dion, who wrote Blood and Born in Bloodmark, Joy McCullough, who wrote Blood, Water, Paint, and then there's so many other authors, like I could go on for a very long time talking about all the authors who inspire me. But I think that just in general, YA authors, young adult authors in general, and people who are writing for lit in general are incredibly inspirational for me because it's not an easy task, and I think that people have this misconception that somehow writing kid lit is easier than writing adult fiction. But the fact of the matter is that, teenagers and young people, they're very discerning, and they do not like being pandered to, and they can tell when they're being pandered to. So in a lot of ways for me, I write adult literary fiction as well. Writing young adult fiction is more difficult.
So you touched on this one a little bit, but do you take character inspiration from people in your life, and is it good or bad?
I think that all my characters have little pieces of people from people in my life. There's not one character who is an exact replica of somebody I know in my life. That being said, another author, Kate Dillon, recently said something along the lines of, why would I want to write about people I don't like in my life? I'm not going to immortalize them in fiction. And I'm going to start using that.
Do you find yourself getting stuck writing things similar to what you read or watch? And how do you get unstuck in your writing?
So I think that this question is interesting because I think that in some ways it answers itself a little bit. When I get stuck, I read, and I know a lot of authors will say that they do not read in the genre that they write in while they're writing, and I think that's kind of silly. And of course, everybody's method is their own method, and I don't want to say that one method is wrong, but at the end of the day, everyone draws inspiration from everything. One for All was influenced by so many different books, so The Princess Bride, obviously The Three Musketeers. There are so many different references there. So when I get stuck, I go to the books that I love, I go to the TV shows that I love, I go to the music I love.
Do you have any tips for getting published?
Ooh, okay, so it depends on what kind of publishing you would like to do. So there's something called self-publishing, which I am very impressed by everyone who self-publishes because they wear many hats. They have, unless they're hiring their own editor, they need to be their own editor. They do a lot of their own marketing, which to be fair, a lot of traditionally published authors are now having to do as well. But that wasn't the route for me. Then there's traditional publishing. So I think that the way that I got started was publishing short stories. So in my high school literary magazine, in my college literary magazine, and then in outside literary magazines. And then the process of getting published for a novel is the way that most people go, because of course there are alternate routes, is you have to write a book. That's important. And then you query, which is a fancy word for you submit your book or parts of your book to literary agents. And if the literary agent is excited about your work, they'll ask for more pages, and then they might ask for the full manuscript, and then if they like it a lot, they'll sign you. So when they sign you, that means that they are going to represent you and represent your work on your behalf to editors at publishing houses. So then the submission cycle starts all over again. The literary agent pitches editors at publishing houses your work, and then if the editor likes your work, it will sometimes go to first or second reads or third reads. Then it will go to something called an acquisition meeting where a bunch of people, I don't actually know what it looks like, but in my mind, I imagine this little room with like a round kind of conference table, with people arguing over money and books. But it's usually, where would this book fit in our publication year cycle, and can we afford this, and do we think that it would make enough money for us to publish it, which publishing is a strange creature. And then, once you have the book deal, then you go through more edits, and at some point the book will come out, hopefully. So I received the offer for One for All in November of 2019, and it was published in March 2022. If that gives anyone kind of an idea of the lead-up time for how long it takes from when a book is actually signed by an editor at a publishing house to the actual publication.
Was One for All the first novel you wrote, or just the first one that you got published?
So, One for All was not the first novel that I wrote. It was not the second novel that I wrote. It was not the third novel that I wrote. It was the fourth. And that first novel will never see the light of day. It is hidden somewhere in my old bedroom, and it's not. No one will ever see it. The third novel was the novel that I signed with my literary agents for, and that ended up going out on submission to editors. And it got close to that match. It got to the magical acquisitions meeting that I talked about earlier a few times, but it never passed that hurdle. So it didn't end up getting published. And as frustrating as that was, I think that the important thing to remember is that all of those books were necessary for me to write in order to write One for All. Because you learn by doing. You learn by writing. So nothing is wasted. No writing is wasted.
All right, so just in closing, thank you again to our amazing teen authors. I hope you all hang on to the love of writing that got you this far, and that you'll continue to keep writing. The ebook that contains our top 20 stories from 2020-30 will be available soon for free on our website at library.loudoun.gov. As always, we hope to host It's All Right again in 2024, so if you have more great ideas, please keep on working on them. If you're graduating this year, please also consider submitting a short story for our adult program, Write On, that takes place annually in the summer. At this point, we'd like to invite all of our award recipients to come to the stage to get a group photograph with Lillie. And everyone is welcome to also enjoy some cupcakes in the lobby and join us for a book signing as well. Thank you again.